His Only Son was a movie I saw trailers for. I saw stuff about it last year, and I even heard some people talk about how it was good, but I never got to watch it. I'm afraid to say, for anyone who really likes this movie, this might not be the video for you, because this is a mostly negative, but there are some positives. By the end of the movie, I recommend you watch it. But starting out, there's a lot of problems with this movie. And with it being Christian month, it's time to talk about it. So let's talk about His Only Son. Normally with a movie I hate, I'm going to start talking about it from the positive things and then go into the negative. But I feel like it is important that I talk about negatives and then move to the positives. So one of the very, very biggest negatives of this movie is it is a Christian movie. I'm afraid to say, I hate to say this because I'm a Christian, and I'm 100% on the board of the Christian movie industry. I think it's way better than Hollywood. There are some problems with it, but it's built off of a better system than Hollywood is. But Hollywood just naturally has the better writers. Because of that, the stories are just a lot of times better. But in this movie, it has some classic Christian writing. The dialogue comes off so dry, and like you feel like they're reading off of a script, and some of that comes from that the acting in most scenes are not great. And I always hate to criticize people on their acting when I have never acted in a movie before. But as someone who watches a lot of movies, actually don't watch a lot of movies, I wish I did, but who's interested in watching a lot of movies and analyzing them, I just find that the acting in this is just not to my liking. It's just kind of boring. But I feel like some of that comes from that the actors didn't get good direction and the dialogue is terrible. The problem with a lot of Christian movies is when they're based off of the Bible, they take a lot of Bible quotes that you put in it to like, oh look, we're biblically correct because we're putting all these Bible quotes in. And the problem is the dialogue in the Bible is not written as a conversation most of the time. Sometimes you have to be able to change the lines and make them sound more like people actually talking. But I will say, in the positives we will talk about this, but I feel like most of the times when they actually quote the Bible, the dialogue actually seems to work. But yes, I feel like the dialogue is so like dry. For example, it's like there's this moment in the very beginning of the movie where Abraham is just like, this is the son of my servant, come with me on this journey. It's like so robotic, and like the line is just so like, okay, you could have found 10 different ways to show it. You could have fixed that dialogue to make it so it's less just reading off script. You need to fill the quota here. This is who this person is. Let us move on. And it's like it came off like that. And some of that is the acting, and sometimes it's just you could have a actor with a terrible script and they just can't fix the terrible script. And that's a big problem with this movie, is that the dialogue is just to the point of so cringy and so... I was telling my sister about this. I'm like, I hate to criticize scripts, and every single time I have to criticize dialogue, I have to remember that I have never written a script before, and I understand how hard it is as someone who has started writing books and all, trying to find a way to put those words in the right way that comes off like humans are saying it, and not like we are putting this line in just to say, oh, this is who this person is. Like, you have to find a creative way, and it's in my mind, it is one of the hardest parts of writing. And so I hate having to criticize it because I've never had to write a screenplay. I want to write a screenplay, but I've never written one. So I feel kind of bad criticizing people who have written a screenplay and it just didn't work. Again, the acting in this movie is also terrible. There's a bad script going for them, but it's also the direction. I always like to say, and a lot of people like to say this, especially with child actors, even that this movie really doesn't have any child actors in it, it's still child actors a lot of times used as an example of this, where if you have a bad actor, a lot of times child actors can be a problem to deal with. It's less of the problem of the actor and more the problem of the director. While directors have a really hard job with bad actors, and you should try to hire good actors, it's the job of the director to direct what he wants from these actors. And because of that, if the actors do a bad job, it really falls back to the director. I'm a manager for my job, and because of that, one of the biggest things I always keep in mind is there's problems with the workers. It all falls back on me because I'm the one keeping them in line. I'm the one. So if there's any problems, it goes back to the leadership. The leadership is always the one at fault. That's just how life works. Those people then can go down and find the exact person who was at fault. under their leadership. But for everyone else from the outside looking in, it's the leader's problem. Just in the same way, the director, if there's bad acting, it's the director's fault because he was the one supposed to be directing them. And if he did a bad job directing them, then he did a bad job directing. That's just plain and simple. The one last bad thing I'm going to bring up is the cinematography. And this is a very big problem with a lot of Christian movies. I put out a YouTube short talking about the lighting in The Chosen and how that's one of its biggest problems. In this case, I feel like the lighting isn't that bad in this movie. The weird thing about this movie, and I've seen it happen before in other movies, is this movie would look good if it didn't have one problem. It feels like they shot it normally, and then at the end, they added in a gray filter on top of it to make everything look a little bit grayer. As you see right here, what I'm doing I'm on purpose doing that to show you what I'm talking about. It's like they're adding a filter that makes it look gray. And it's really off-putting because of the reason that it would look good if they didn't add that. I don't know why either they could have filmed it with that, but I'm pretty sure they literally just added it afterwards, because if you look at them, the colors are shooting through, and you can see that they would look good if they had just taken that filter off. So I don't know what they did there, but if anyone who had worked on that movie with the editing watches this video, please comment down below why that gray filter is on there, because it doesn't look good at all, and it takes away. So now, with that being said, I actually want to talk about the good things, because there are good things about this movie. It wasn't like a movie that I wanted to turn off really bad. It was more of a movie that I was just like, I'm regretting putting out a review for this, because it's going to be mainly negative. But let's talk about the couple positives. A couple positives will be two scenes come to mind of, these scenes are good. And that is, I'm assuming you guys already know the story of Abraham and Isaac, so I don't think I have to explain that. But in the story of Abraham, his wife Sarah is not able to bear children. And after a long time of that God keep promising this, Sarah eventually says, I think I understand what's going on here. I can't bear you your children, but my handmaid can. So I'm going to give her to you to be able to have it so you can have children. That happens in this movie. You have that whole moment in this movie. And that was a very emotional scene, because you have, both of them, Sarah and Abraham, because Abraham's like, no, that's not, I don't think that's what God is saying. I don't think that's, and she's like, yes, it is. I feel like this is what God is saying. And a little spoiler alert, eventually he does do that, and that's a whole issue that actually they kind of addressed a little bit in this movie. But that scene was actually emotional. You could feel that she was emotional about this idea that she had to give her husband to another woman. You feel this feeling of that she feels like she's less of a woman because of the reason that she can't bear children, which is a whole issue that's not a topic for this video, and really just not a topic for this channel, because I talk about movies and not theology. That moment was very emotional. And the other moment was a moment almost exactly like that, and that was when Abraham finally has to admit to Isaac that he is indeed the sacrifice, and that Isaac has to be willing to lay down his life for the sacrifice. For the whole movie, I kept thinking of, because, we just had Easter, we just had Holy Week and all, and so it's fresh in my mind right now, the whole Passion. So because of that, the whole movie, I kept thinking, and it's hard not to think of this, the similarities between Isaac and Jesus. Both having to carry the own thing they're going to be used to sacrifice them. Jesus the cross, Isaac the sticks that he's going to be sacrificed on. Both of them willingly gave up their life. And so this scene was very well put, where he's like, Isaac's like, I don't know if this doesn't sound like what, are you sure this is what God? And it's like, yes, I've been begging him every day for this to not happen, but he keeps not answering. Yes, this is indeed what God wants. And Isaac's like, okay. And he just holds out his hands and allows his dad to tie him up. And he just lays down on the thing, ready to be killed. And there's a really emotional scene, they hug before it, and there's it's really for those who don't know the Bible, going into that moment, they were probably like, what the heck? What? But also, they're it comes off like this really emotional moment of, oh my goodness, he's actually going to get sacrificed. And of course, we all know what happens, that he doesn't, and God stops him. But that was one of my favorite moments, because in that moment, when he's being sacrificed, you see God show him a flash forward of what's to come. You see Isaac with the lamb, you see the burning fire, all this type of stuff, and you see all these flashes. And at the very end, the last flash is just a tomb with the stone rolled away. And I was like, yes, this is awesome. Tying it into the resurrection and all. That's really, really cool. I was like, yes, I love this. I love this. I love this. And that scene was really good. But my favorite part that really redeemed this movie and made me say, I would recommend this movie to people is the very ending moment when it just flashes forward and it says 2,000 years later. And then you see 3 crosses. You don't even get a look at Jesus or anything like that. And then you just see the soldier saying, truly this is the Son of God. And then the screen turns black and it says, John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that anyone who believes in him might not die, but have eternal life. After the line is done, it just fades away, but you have it so his only son. The name of this movie stays on for a little bit longer. I will say that's a negative too, because at that moment I'm like, I get it. Like, yeah, I like that. But then I feel like they had his only son left on for a little bit too long, or they should have done something to turn it into the title, because it was just the same font as every other word in that sentence. So when it faded away, it didn't fade away everything and then turn that into the title or anything. It just kept those same fonts for like a good 15 seconds to maybe even 30 seconds of just showing that until it faded away. And it was like, okay, if you're going to do that, make it so it's more like what the X-Men do with the X-Men movies, where the Fox logo, everything fades away, but you see the X logo for a little bit longer. But you see the X in Fox a little bit longer. Something like that. You could do even a little bit longer than that, but I felt like they kept on for too long, that people, at least in my mind, I'm like, yes, I get it. The name of the movie ties into how God gave his only son as a sacrifice for our sins. Like, I get that already. Every Christian gets that already. But I like how you hammered it home with that, but you kept it there for a little bit too long. So I would have recommended that they cut it a little bit sooner so that it didn't. Because it felt like it was like, did you get it? Did you get it? And just like, did you get it? And just doing that for like 20 seconds straight. Just like, I get it. All right? We got it. Move on now. Move on. Anyways, so guys, that's my thoughts about this movie. In the end, I would say if you're willing to watch a movie with some terrible script writing, bad direction, bad acting, with strangely great filtered cinematography, and overall just a very Christian-based movie, then I would recommend it.